All right, so let's get busy. I had some issues with my instrument cluster on the Cherokee, and for the life of me I could not get the oil pressure gauge to work, and I thought that I'd found the correct wire going to the sensor, but I could still not get it to deflect. You should be able to run that sensor wire to ground and it should deflect when you have the instrument cluster on. So let me show you a way to test these instruments on the bench, which is pretty cool. And that way you can check it on the bench and then you don't have to worry about whether your sensors are bad. And actually what happened was that oil pressure gauge was bad. I've got a new one in there now. So let me show you how you can test these on the bench. All right, did a little bit of work. Projects have been slow. The project that I was promising you guys, the short wheelbase J10, was sold out from underneath me. I'm not mad about that. It was a good friend, and he had to get it out of his yard. So that project isn't going to come to pass. However, I've got my eyeball on a narrow track Cherokee, and I may be able to finesse that deal, get that deal out here because the body's in good shape. It supposedly runs and drives, but probably needs a lot of work. It's a 78 Cherokee narrow track. So let's see if we can swing that, and that'll be my first project of the year where I'm going to build it fast and flip it. So let's see how that works. And also during the gap in between projects, I put in a new exhaust fan. I'm waiting on the louvers to come in for that. And I put in an oscillating fan to grab the air conditioner cold air and more forcibly move it throughout the shop. And it's made a big difference. Now this cord, I'm going to reroute this cord, do something clean with it, but those two items, getting the exhaust fan working, has brung the shop temperature from 100 degrees starting temp to, I've seen it go as low as 80. So that's pretty good. Normally it gets it down to about 90, but it's potentially getting it down to 80 now. And I've only been in here for a little while. That's why it's stuck at 90, a little below 90. But it does make a difference in cooling, removing the heat. But the big significance is it reduces the humidity in here quite a bit. All right, Rock Lawrence out. All right, so we're gonna have a green ground going to the negative lead on the battery, and we're gonna use these 9-volt batteries. This is gonna be great. And then you'll need to power the sensor, and so you have to find the common lead. And if you find the common lead between all the sensors, if you track this around, you'll see that it goes to basically it goes to here, and it goes to here, and it goes back up to here. So find the common, that is the positive, and we're going to run this baby hot, and you can pick any one that you want because they're all electrically the same point. And then, like I said, we'll tap this to the battery so that we don't worry about shorting it out. Now we need to find a ground lead for the instruments. And so it's going to be the same potential as the others, as the negative potential on the instrument cluster, and then we'll put that to the sensor that we want to test. And the first one we're going to test is here. Now if you see, each instrument has a pinout that goes out to the sensor, and you got it right here also, and then you've got it down here also. Okay, so the pinouts are pretty easy to find. The common for each sensor is easy to find, and the ground is easy to find also. So this is going to be our negative, that's the positive, so the blue is our negative. So we're going to test our oil pressure sensor. That was the one that was giving us grief. And now when we put power to it, we should be able to see the instrument deflect. All right, so let's check that out. Basically power up the instruments, and also note that you need to have a jumper, or you need to have that power supply or that power regulator in place, or it won't work because it interrupts the circuit. All right, so let's see. Let's try another one. We'll show you the ground on the fuel gauge. All right, so let's look at the fuel gauge here. You should be able to see that. There we go. And then it has to bleed off and go back. See, we can see it deflect. And then go back. All right. Obviously, you can see how that gauge is sticking, so I'm going to have to pull that apart. It's mechanically dragging, so I'll get that tuned up. All right, so dig this. Check it out. I did have to adjust that. Basically, there's little pins in the instrument that kind of centers the needle so that it doesn't travel too far right or too far left. And basically it's sitting at 0 now. That was actually must have got bent during reassembly, so I readjusted that. So now let's take a look at this thing as it travels. Okay, and action. Woo! Look at that. Yeah, baby. Do it. Now watch it go back. It slowly bleeds off. Goes the other direction. Nice and smooth now. And I don't know if you've noticed this too, but before the needle was more yellow. And so I used a combination of yellow and red to get orangish color. And no, I don't have any fluorescent orange to put on there. So this is going to be just fine. All right, so let's get this instrument cluster put inside. Also, speedometer wasn't working. And it did work at first, and then it stopped working. And so I checked the cable right here, checked the cable. It's all good. I checked the speedometer gear at the transfer case. It's good. I readjusted it, but it was good. So in order to test the speedometer, all you have to do is hook up the cable and then put a drill on it, and then you can run the drill, make sure you're going the right direction. You won't break anything, but run the drill and you'll see this go up. And what's really cool about this is a non-connected, non-mechanical connected speedometer. And so what there is inside the speedometer, there's a yoke, and it's made of metal, and that's tied to the needle. And then there's a magnet with several poles on it, magnetic poles, that the cable spins. And so those magnets spin, and at the rate of spin, and I don't know, there's some kind of wicked science and engineering that goes into that, but basically what happens is, as the magnets spin around that yoke tries to catch those magnets, and it starts moving, and there's a return spring in here that makes it go back. So the faster it spins, the more magnetic inductance takes place, and it grabs that needle and it starts moving it faster and faster and faster. And then as it slows down, the repetition of the magnetic field slows down, and so does the needle. And so it kind of tracks relative to your speedometer ratio and all the other mechanical stuff that's engineered into it. So it's pretty cool on how that works. So you can hook your drill up to that in order to test. Hook your drill up to the cable, spin the cable, spin the yoke and the magnets that are in here, and you should be able to see it work. All right, so let's go ahead and put this thing in. All right, so we're in the Cherokee for a test drive. I previously had the ammeter and the temperature gauge worked. However, the oil pressure gauge and the fuel gauge did not work. So check this out, man. I've got them. They're both working. Looking good. And let's take it down the road. And so we're backing up. I got oil pressure for the first time. Yay! And that's because the gauge was actually bad. Air conditioner's blowing. It's turning 110 degree temperature into 100 degree temperature right now. Oh, look at that. I got miles per hour on there. Yes, sir. Whoop, whoop. And we're having things now. All right, temperature gauge is coming up. So all my goodies is working. Awesome. So let's get this short video loaded. And like I said, I'm going to work on getting another project. It may be a narrow track Cherokee. Let's see, Lord willing, let's see if that's able to happen. And I've got some plans. I was kind of reluctant to do another Cherokee, but this is a question for all you Jeep people out there. What is the one thing, and I'm actually driving up on the hill so I can turn around. Yes, sir, that's what you do in the Jeep. So what is it that narrow track wagons have a problem with? It's the rear fender wells. You can't get anything bigger than a 31 in there, even with lift. It's just miserable. I don't know why Jeep AMC decided to take and narrow down those outside fender wells. But what if you went in there and restored those to the wide track dimensions, but kept the narrow track fender well, or not the fender well, but the trim around it. So you obviously would want to raise the lip of the fender up to maximize clearance for those big tires. But let's say instead of putting a flare on them, you just use do some body work and you put the original flare on there so that it looks like a narrow track, but with 33, 35 inch tires. Easy. Wouldn't that be cool? I think it would be crazy cool. All right. So let's head back. I'm going to do some video editing and we'll get this out. Rock Lawrence, the Slab.